I am Comedian Nazareth, and thank you so much for joining us for this wonderful hour of a podcast that deals with comedy, comedians, and other guests who are really helpful to your life, your career, and your health too. So this is awesome that we can get different guests from different aspects of life to be able to make you laugh, but also to give you some wisdom, help you maybe be an example of how their life has been through that maybe that will encourage you a little bit or maybe makes you go, oh, at least my life is not that bad. And if they can get over it, I can get over it too. So that and tonight's show will be the same thing. Uh, it's good to be back. I've been on a tour. I was in where was I? I was in Palm Springs doing a retreat for Olive Chris, which is a wonderful ministry that helps hundreds of thousands of foster children and their families and sex trafficking, stopping sex trafficking and all that. So it's a great ministry. Also, I did an event for our police department, our fire department, and our first responders in Corona last Thursday. So that was good. Did my taxes yesterday. I'm done with taxes. So good until next year. So this is good. It is 70 degrees. If you notice, I'm wearing t-shirt because it's 70 something degrees outside in California, Southern California. So I think our winter has passed by with 3 or 4 days of cold, and that was it. Praise God. Anyway, my guest today is this month is history, Women's History Month, so we celebrate that because I have 3 women and no 4 women in my no 5. I have my mother, of course. I have my beloved wife. I have 2 daughters, and I have our demon dog Delilah, which is a female as well. So that makes them 5 right there. And sometimes I have estrogen dripping from my ceiling. Where when my son comes back from home from college, I go, "Hey, go, 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 go! You don't want to come in. Trust me, you don't want to come in. Just go. I'll call you." What about you, Dad? They're gonna kill you. It's okay. I'm used to this. Just go. At least one of us is saved. Anyway, so that's what happened. So anyway, my guest today for this not only Women's History Month, but today is International Women's Month Day, International Women's Day. And I married an international woman. My wife, my beloved wife, is from the Holy Land, okay, born in the Gaza Strip, and to a wonderful Christian family. So she is my International Women's Day star. But I brought the best in the International Women Day guest. Um, I met this young lady in, I think it was Nashville or wherever we did the Christian Comedy Association. We ran to each other because we both have Middle Eastern names. Her last name is Farha. Her first name is Wendy. She's Canadian, so therefore automatically she's sweet and nice. And this is I'm gonna read you her bio so I can be fair to her. This is what she writes in her bio. I learned that as a result of being diagnosed with clinical depression in 2000, and then with an aggressive form of breast cancer in '09, life is tough. We need to laugh. You can read about how cancer turned me into a comedian right in their bio, but also you're going to hear it today. As a singer songwriter, I also enjoy sharing my songs with others. Music is a powerful tool that allows us to communicate to the deepest parts of the heart. I feel very grateful that I got to do what I do for a living. As a public speaker, motivating people to be all they can be is another passion of mine. Helping others to identify their fears, begin to find healing and wholeness, and reach forward and upward to realize their full potential. We should never assume we've got tomorrow. Wow. I now live every day not as if it's my last, but if it's my best day. So please welcome my friend, comedian Wendy Farha. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, all the way from Canada, eh?
Hey, what part of Canada are you from?
I'm just north of you. I'm in British Columbia. So I'm in
Ooh,
a place called Abbotsford. It's the lower mainland of BC and it's 2 hours north of Seattle. So,
actually, I did a tour and I stopped in Abbotsford, did an event, had the newspaper. Actually, I have an article that I'm proud of that was written first
oh,
page on Abbotsford. But also, you guys have Bigfoot, right?
We do? I don't know. I just moved here from Montreal. So
Oh,
I
you
yeah, I don't know a lot about BC. I'm
do
just
you speak
learning.
French? Do you speak
Ben
French?
oui. Et toi? Tu parles français?
Oh,
Un petit peu.
oh, beaucoup, un beaucoup. My mother
Un beaucoup. That
used to
means
be
a little lot. Un
a
beaucoup.
little lot.
No,
Yeah,
you said
that's
a lot.
yeah. So you'll never know how much French I know. All I know, my mother was a French teacher, so
oh,
she wanted. I learned French when I lived in Kuwait. I studied it, but then I haven't talked. And my mother doesn't talk French, so she kind of forgot a lot, but she understands a lot of French. And
you've been
we,
everywhere.
yeah, when we
You've
were in
been
Paris, we
everywhere, boy. You've been everywhere.
uh, uh all I know is that Lawate Lawate. I don't know that song, but anyway. So, why did you move from Montreal, which is like the French part of Canada? It's a
Yeah.
completely different than British Columbia. Why did you
Well,
do that?
BC, the lower mainland, doesn't get much snow and it's very mild here. We go to maybe, well, we're in Celsius, right? So we go to maybe -4 Celsius. I don't remember what that is in Fahrenheit, but
Still cold.
well, not compared to -30 in Montreal. But we really don't have a lot of snow and it's just balmy here. And people are chill and nobody dresses up. Everyone's like tree hugger. It's the California of Canada. So Toronto would be the New York of Canada. Montreal would be the Paris of Europe. And BC is like California. And we have some, we have the big trees and the mountains. We're very similar to, I hear we're similar to Oregon and
Mm,
what's just below us, Washington State.
Washington
I haven't
State,
been
yeah.
able to cross the border since I got here because I moved here in the pandemic. So,
That's what I want to ask you. What
yeah.
is the situation in Canada right now as far as a comedian being able to travel or
Oh,
actually across the border?
well, let me make sure my blouse is straight here. I can't talk to you if my blouse isn't straight.
That's
Um,
true.
so
Now it's perfect.
even with when there's no pandemic, it's tough for you to come up here and me to go down there if we're going to do things to honor the Lord legally. Because Canadians don't want Americans coming up and taking jobs away from Canadians, and vice versa. You guys don't want Canadians coming down. So when I tour in the States, I have to get a P2 visa. I have to apply 3 months early, and I have to pay $600 Canadian, and then I have to fill out about 30 pages of paperwork. I have to join a union. It's as if I'm from some other. Well, I was going to say some other country. I am, but like from some other planet, and vice versa. So, we just have to do our due diligence. Now, I've just joined hands with an organization called Mission Go, and they're an umbrella organization for missionaries like myself and independent evangelists, itinerant evangelists, and so then the church will be able to pay them, and then I'm on a retainer with the mission, so it eliminates
Mm.
all that hassle with the finances. So then I should be able to cross the border more easily.
I
Yeah,
see. I know my friend Leland was having trouble, and on my other show that we do every
yeah.
night, we were praying for him to be able, but still he couldn't get the work visa in
So
time to get in.
Leland lives in Abbotsford too. So
Right.
there's the two most famous comedians in Canada living in Abbotsford. So like
The-
because everyone knows who I am and the paparazzi is right outside it's awful. Anyway, so Leland's on an O3, I think. It's like people who are kind of distinctive in their talent. So he's on a 3-year visa. So he's got a bit of an easier time, but still, it's never easy crossing the border. It's like, what do you have in your purse? And what are you doing here? What do you want? And vice versa. When you guys come up, it's like they think you're smuggling drugs or something. It's like, you're a comedian. Get out of the car. Yeah.
That's
Get your
fine.
guitar out of the car.
Uh, before, I mean, we're gonna talk about having cancer, having clinical depression, all that. Before all that, let's say you were born in Montreal,
Yeah.
and your parents. What did your parents do?
So my parents were born in 1916 and 1917. So they were my grandparents' age when they had me. They were 42 and 43 respectively. My dad said, "Oh, what a perfect little girl." And my mom said, "Yeah, we're not doing that again." So I'm an only child. And so my mom was a teacher and my dad was a sales coordinator. My dad's parents came from Damascus, Syria in 1903 to the Ellis
Mm.
Island. They were in New York, and then they came up to Canada in 1913 because they said it's not cold enough in New York. Let's go to Montreal. So it's like, what were you thinking? I could have been a New York star on Broadway, you know.
So
Anyway,
you are your last name Farha, is that Syrian?
and it means joy, and I'm a
It
comedian.
means join.
Really
It means
are.
joy in Arabic. Yeah.
And
So
I
what
speak Khoy Arabi.
when you finished college or high school what did you want to do? What did you do as a career?
You know, I was so lost, and I'm actually working through some counseling now because my parents, like, I was raised by wolves, I think. My parents just didn't know how to raise a kid, and I had zero guidance, zero life lessons. Like, I don't know if your parents instilled things in you, like life stories, like if you work hard, you'll get what you want. I had none of that. Like, there was a lot of neglect because they were really miserable together, and they were just like it. They didn't mean to neglect, but I spent like 90% of my time alone. But I look back and I
Mm.
think, well, maybe God used that to prep me for, getting out and doing comedy because it can be isolating. So I always try to put a positive spin on it. And so they gave me zero advice. Like, I was just sort of left to figure it out myself. So I went to work at 16 and I was with a group of adults. You know, I was 16 and they were in their 40s and 50s and 60s, which back then seemed really old. And then I just, for the next literally 30 years, 28, 38, 40, 50, like, I stumbled through life sad, trying to figure out, like, what am I here for? But I became a Christian 2 years after graduating high school. And that's when I started writing songs. I asked God, I said, "Lord, I'm going to accept you into my life, but I'm giving you a week to prove yourself." I thought that was very nice of me. You give God a
Yeah,
week.
that's a lot more than me. Oh, okay.
So because in God's economy, that could be like 1,000 years. A week could be 1,000. So I said, "Lord, I really want you to show yourself to me." And so I just started writing songs, and I had never written songs before in my life, and they were just flowing out. And so, among other things that He showed me, the Word came alive to me. I started reading the Word, and it started, wow, like, how did people 2, 3,000 years ago know about my life? Here's my life in the Bible. And so I started
Mm.
singing in prisons and coffee houses. And it's good singing in prisons because if they don't like your music, they can't leave, right? So it's a captive,
Right.
right? You know that. And you've administered in how many prisons? 300 or something?
Almost 300, yeah, I think, or
Incredible.
more.
Yeah. So if they don't like you, right, they're stuck. So you get a lot of good practice doing all my songs.
So you sang to the Lord and you were, I mean, still life was hard for you at the time,
Very.
even though, but
Yeah.
God gave you peace through that and you kept
Oh,
going,
sometimes
or
I have
was it?
peace, but a lot of times I didn't have peace because I was so emotionally broken. And back then, I don't know, there didn't seem to be a lot of teaching on how to become emotionally whole. And and you know that some some theology, like when you become a Christian, it's like now you're good because you're a Christian. When in actual fact, it's just the first step. And then there's a lot of healing that comes. And so I didn't
Yes.
really understand how to be emotionally whole. I had been molested at 7 by a neighbor, and that really impacted me. And now I'm just finding out at 62 that I have childhood trauma. I don't remember a Christmas before I was 30 years old. I don't remember a single conversation with my parents. I don't remember seeing. So sometimes we just block stuff. And
Mm.
my life has just been, 45 years since I became a Christian, 44 years of unpacking hurt. But I've seen the hand of God healing me every step of the way, which is awesome.
And that's amazing. Were you funny back in these days? Did you think,
Apparently,
did you know you had a sense of humor?
apparently, I remember, what they say about, you should go back to when you're 5 and 6 years old to find out what you should do when you were old. Like, I remember being at a sleepover when I was 11 and I had listened to a Bob Newhart record. Did you?
Oh,
Were you exposed to Bob Newhart when you were young?
Yeah, of course.
Well,
Not am young. No,
I
no.
don't know where you grew up. Where did you grow up?
I I up to age 19 I grew up, I lived in Kuwait, but then I came in here at 19.
I don't
So
think Bob
I've been
Newhart
here.
spoke Arabic, so I don't know if you heard him.
N- No, I so did you feel like funny enough to be able to say, "Hey, I can do stand up,"
Never,
like Bob Newhart?
never.
No, never.
No, I was doing a little stand up imitating Bob Newhart doing the bus driver routine.
Right. I love that
And
part.
and I was 11 and my little friends were like but I thought I was wonderful. And then when I was 40, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. A lot of it came out of a very painful, toxic marriage. And
Mm.
I ended up stumbling into the emergency ward of our psychiatric hospital in Montreal, the Douglas. And it was very painful because as a Christian, sometimes you have that theology, like the joy of the Lord is my strength. I shouldn't have depression. Jesus should be enough for me. So it's that sense of failure as you walk into the psychiatric ward. But
Mm.
listen, that's where God met me, because at that point, I needed medication to bring myself. What I say is sometimes it brings you out of the basement, but you're only at the first floor. Now you have to do the work to keep going up. And
Mm.
what I tell people is, you don't depend just on medication. You look at your thyroid and your general health. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough nourishment? Are you in circumstances that maybe you need to leave because it's just killing you emotionally? So, but those antidepressant, and I have some extras here if you want me to send you some.
Oh, I have a lot
Oh,
here.
you
I
have them.
gotta.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You're so generous. You are so You Canadians are just so generous.
We have free healthcare. Why don't we share? So, but I do have to pay for my meds, I must say. So then I got on the meds, and then I thought, oh, I feel better. I guess I can go off them. And the psychiatrist hadn't told me about, not going cold turkey. So I went off them, and I just went right back in the pit. It took
Oh.
longer to get out. And what I've found is that everyone on meds does this. They go on and then they feel shame, or they think, I don't need them. And then they go off and on and off and on and off. Whether you're, just mild level depression, or whether you're schizophrenic or bipolar, any type of mental illness, you'll see this pattern with people with mental illness. So I finally realized, okay, and I'm on them to this day, like 22 years later. And I am not ashamed. I will shout it from the rooftop. I don't care if you think I'm less spiritual. Don't judge me because you're wearing glasses. You're on, insulin. You do chemo when you have cancer. I take, meds for my brain. And
That's a good way. Let me stop you, Wendy,
yeah,
because that's a good point, and that's an issue sometimes in the Christian
huge.
mentality. If you grow, it's like, you know what, you don't have enough faith because you have this, and they look at mental illness as something that it's not.
Special category.
It's not. It's a special category. It has nothing with the chemicals in your body. It has nothing to do with that. It's something that maybe if you read the Bible more
Yes.
or
Yeah.
you studied more, you'll be able to do that. And for you to take pills on that, you kind of you're
A
done.
loser. But what I
Right.
say is, so someone gave this beautiful example, and as an artist, you'll appreciate the visual. Picture the mind as the piano, the brain as the mind. No, wait, let me get this. The piano as the brain and the mind as a piano player.
Uh-huh.
So the piano player goes to play the piano on an out of tune piano. And people say, boy, is he ever a lousy pianist. But then you
Mm.
tune the piano, and now he's playing Tchaikovsky, and it's like, oh, wow, he's so amazing. So when the brain is not in tune, and the brain is an organ, I learned this from James Dobson from Focus on the Family.
Of course.
His dad was an evangelist, and at 39, he had a complete breakdown. And so James Dobson said he was the one who changed my mind about my attitude toward depression, because way before I was diagnosed, I thought, well, as a new Christian, right? Why would you be depressed? You're a Christian. And he said, listen, there's the brain and the mind. And the brain is an organ. And then the mind is like where you process your decisions and your choices and your thoughts. And it's two, like your lung is your lung is your lung. But here it's the brain and the mind. So the organ of the brain, sometimes it needs a tune up. And you would never say to someone with Alzheimer's, oh, if you just trusted Jesus more, you wouldn't forget. Like, we would never say that. You're a
Right.
failure because you have dementia. So why is it any different with,
That's a
the
very good point, Wendy. That's
Mhm,
amazing. I hope people who are watching, we have 78 people right now watching live, and
mhm,
we probably have 5,000 watch it on audio. But I want them to hear that.
mhm,
We don't go to someone with Alzheimer's and say, hey,
mhm.
you don't have enough faith. What's wrong with you? Just get over it, pray about it.
Right.
Uh, I mean, I believe in healing. I
Yes, I do.
believe God can heal, touch someone and heal them. I
Yeah.
believe that He can do that. But I'm saying if God's decision is for you to go through that or to
Mhm.
continually go through that, I mean, I have great preachers who are on wheelchairs. That's just amazing people that
Yes. You see?
yes. So no. So you had this clinical, depression. You came out of it, or you probably got it under control, and
Got
boom,
under
you're hit with breast cancer, right?
So yeah, the clinical depression came when I was 40. And then I thought, okay, sometimes I do these concerts once in a while, and I
Oh.
add comedy into the mix to keep my spirits up. I started looking at life more money, trying to look for the humor. So yes, I was funny when I was young, but this is when I started being intentional about comedy and saying, okay, so here's a sad situation. I'm going to look at the humor of it. Then at 49, the Lord started convicting me about being pessimistic. A year before I was diagnosed with cancer, he said, you're kind of a complainer and you need to kind of change that. So I find when you follow the Lord, he leaves certain areas alone. He doesn't convict you. I could look at you
Mm.
and think, I wonder why God isn't convicting Naz about this in his life. It's such an obvious problem. But he might be dealing with me on that. But then there's an area where you're successful, you've overcome that sin, and I'm still grappling. The Lord deals with us so individually. And the Lord had never dealt with my attitude, my until I was 49. And then he said, I want you to start being more optimistic. So I'm like, yeah, like that's going to happen. And then he's like, oh,
That's California right there. That's not Montreal. That's not BC. That's California right there.
so
Okay.
I was like, okay, I'll be more positive. Okay. And so
Okay.
then once I was willing, I started noticing something would happen. And I go, oh, well, it could have been worse. And I'm like, who just said that? Was that Wendy? Because it was not like me. So when I got diagnosed, I hit 50. We don't say I turned 50. We say I hit 50. And then a month later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Ah.
I'm the 11th cancer in my family.
Okay,
And
before you go, let me stop you right there. And
yeah,
before that, you were going on stage after you had the clinical depression, and you were doing comedy or just speaking. And what kind of
no.
jokes were you, or how were you? What do you call it? Presenting that
So
what you've been through.
I started singing in 1978 when I got saved at 18.
Right.
And then I did, a few concerts because it's Montreal. There aren't a lot of English churches, and I only sung in English churches. It's not like in the
Oh.
States where, you turn around and there's a church and turn around church, 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 church. And in Montreal, it's a lot of Catholic churches that are closed, some French churches, and then a few English churches, so
Hmm.
not huge. And so I did from 1978 to 19 whatever. I was doing a few coffee houses and concerts here and there. And then at 40, I started doing a little bit of comedy, but I don't remember if I did jokes or I just like kind of goofed it up on stage in between songs. But the reaction was so positive. I thought, that's really good. But I only sung like 2, 3 times a year.
Oh,
And then
I see.
and then when I was 50, I got the cancer. And that's the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm telling you, it just,
Really? Tell
oh
me about that.
it wasn't as hard as a depression by any means. So the Lord had been working on my attitude to be more, I need back support here. Ugh. Um,
Oh,
the Lord was telling me to be positive, right? So I'm like, okay.
right.
So I got diagnosed with this aggressive form of breast cancer. Like I said, my mom had had it 4 times. I'm the 11th cancer. Her sister had had it 4 times. My dad had died of it in 2005. And my cousin had it. So 24 hours when you're diagnosed, you're in shock. You're just like, I remember being at a red light and looking at the cars on either side of me and thinking, they don't know I have cancer. Like life is going on like normal. What's going on? It's like
Oh.
dies. You know, like why is life still going on? It's like you should know that I'm in paralysis here, emotional paralysis. But after
Oh.
24 hours, I'm like, okay, so we're gonna see the silver lining, and that was God. I'm like, we're gonna so went into the doctor and he said, it's really aggressive. We're gonna do a lumpectomy. I'm like, no, we're gonna do a double mastectomy because of my history, because there are 10 before me. And he
Smart.
goes, well, that's a good decision. So it's like right there, it's not a double mastectomy, it's my double. Because
You have In and Out in British Columbia?
do we have what? No.
In and Out Burger. That's where the double comes
We have
from.
Tim Hortons.
Oh,
Tim
Tim
Hortons.
Hortons.
Yes. To be
He has a
Canadian
double.
is to love Tim Hortons.
We love Tim Hortons. I love Tim Hortons when I'm in Canada, but what's a double?
It's a coffee with 2 cream, 2 sugar.
See, that's where we divided as a nation.
Oh, double
Because double is an In and Out hamburger, which is only in the West Coast right now. It's not in the rest, but the best burger in the country. But how did we get burger to double mastectomy? I don't know, but keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, I also call it my corporate downsizing. Yeah. So, I mean,
I love this.
I'm telling you, I went to sleep on the table before my double mastectomy telling a joke to the anesthesiologist. And he had the nerve to put me out before the punchline. I was so offended. What the heck? I know. I mean, some people would say, "Oh, you're masking your feelings." So I wasn't. I just that I am determined to not go down with the ship. I'd been in depression, and I wasn't going to go back there. And I just believed God gave me the faith to believe that something good was going to happen. So I woke up and my doctor was there and he said, oh, good news. We got it all. It hasn't spread. I'm like, yay. So came back a month later and he said, oops, they made a mistake. I'm like, seriously? He goes, yeah, it's spread. And he says, we have to hit you with everything. It's aggressive. So I had to have 14 sessions of chemo, 28 sessions of radiation, a parallel year of a drug called Herceptin. And I just finished 10 years of my oral medication. So this was 2009, I was diagnosed. And I had to have 5 other surgeries. 3 were minor, 2 were major. And so I was like, okay, so here we go. Well, as I started chemo, this lady called and said, we're doing a documentary called Beauty and the Breast, not Beauty and the Beast, Beauty and the Breast. Beauty and the Breast. And she said, the ladies are kind of sad in my movie. I'm like, you think? Because they're all going through cancer. And she said, I heard you're funny. Can you come do a little screen test? And I said, oh, I'm really tired. I just started chemo. I'm tired. She goes, oh, please. I said, okay. So I went and did the screen test. And I talked about, I hope I'm not being too graphic here.
No, you're not.
Practicing for your mammogram by opening the fridge door and then just, slamming. And she was sold. She says, you're my girl. I need you in my movie. I'm like, all right. So the film crew started following me. I mean, Naz, I was having a blast. It didn't make sense at all. I said, I'm having fun with cancer. And then I had my little, my falsies. And I started taking them out and playing around like, you can have a yarmulke, earmuff. And if you're on the plane, you can put them over. And if a guy's looking at you there, you say, would you like one? So, I mean, it was.
Let me ask you this. Did you were still on your cortisol, which is the medication for your depression, or not?
Yeah.
Did that kind of help you be in a good mood during all that or not?
Not that good a mood. I mean, they're not miracle workers, really.
Right.
I mean,
you're right.
They stabilize you. And you don't feel necessarily as like I can't cry. I have to be really sad to cry. They don't let you cry. They don't let you go down. And I've had people say that to me, like it neutralizes your emotions in a way. Like sometimes I'd just love to have a good cry and I can't because they make me feel so stable.
What do you say to, I mean, I want to hear the rest of the journey, but what do you say to someone, a woman who just either have a family history that she's afraid she's going to get cancer, or just found out she has stage one, two, or three, or whatever, or just finished with it, and she goes, what is your secret? What is your secret to be in that good of a mood going through that?
Oh, I'm sometimes concerned that people will compare themselves to me and think, well, I'm not as strong a Christian as she is because
Mm.
I'm not giggling my way through chemo. I had a very good experience with chemo in that I didn't throw up once. The chemos are really good now. And I went around telling people, oh, you have breast cancer, don't worry. And then they would go through chemo and throw up and feel horrible and all that. So I learned to stop saying that. Everyone's individual.
Mm.
And I had good support. I had someone taking care of me and doing all my cooking. It's not uncommon for people. I hope I'm not freaking anyone out, but it's not uncommon for women to get a double mastectomy and their husbands leave them. It's a,
Oh.
it's a thing.
Ooh.
And I mean, I was still married at the time, and that did not happen to me. I had support. I talked to a social worker who said one of her breast cancer patients, because she was from another ethnicity, she came home after chemo and her husband would say, come on, get dinner on the table. Like
Yep.
she
I
wasn't allowed to
know.
be sick. So I don't hold myself up as the common example. God did something in that year and a half that was highly unusual. It was not as bad as a depression, and it was not as hard as my marriage. The cancer, I can just say, I just kind of floated through because God's presence was doing something. Now that could be something else. Someone else could say, oh, I lost my job and God's peace was with me, and I could fall apart if I lose my job. Like, you can't always compare experiences because
Right.
it's
Right.
teaching you something in an experience, and it's individual. So I've had people go, oh my, and they put me on a pedestal. They're like, oh my goodness, like you're so amazing, and and I just think that makes me nervous because I think God was just prepping me for something, because as I went through it, they saw a spot on my lung and my spine. And the
Mm.
doctor said, we think it might be cancer, but we don't know. And I said, oh, so what do? You cut it out? And he goes, no. And I said, okay, so you nuke it? No. I said, oh, you mean it's not curable if it's cancer? And he goes, no, but we would give you as long as possible. I'm like, oh, okay. And when will you know? He said, we won't know for 2 years if you're dying or not.
Mm.
That was harder than the double mastectomy. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? I can't. Who hangs around 2 years waiting to find out? That's really atrocious. I went home
Right.
and I thought, here we are, always telling people, if you accept Jesus into your life, you'll go to heaven when you die. And that's how you can have peace. And then the doctor says, well, that's good that you believe that because you might be going next week. And you're like, no, I don't want to go to heaven. It's peaceful there. I don't want to go. And we have a very unpopular view. Like, I don't mind dying. I just don't want to be there when it happens.
All right.
And so I say in my comedy routine, it's like, I want to stay here where there's taxes and bad roads and Justin Trudeau. And everybody laughs at that because
Of course.
our prime minister isn't very popular at this point.
Oh,
So, but we should still be praying for him. Man,
yes.
I'm gonna get a blouse.
No, you're fine. Your blouse is fine. Your blouse is
No, it
fine.
looks
We
good.
we can adjust this in post production. Don't worry.
Yeah,
No,
we
even though we're live, it's too late. But hey,
So,
you,
so I went home and I said, you know what? I am not sitting around for 2 years worrying. That's just a complete waste of time. I already feel like I've wasted I'm already 50 and I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I keep asking children, what do you want to do when you grow up? Because I'm looking for ideas, It's like, well, fireman. I hadn't tried that. Maybe I'll be a fireman. So I just said, if I'm going to die, fine. I mean, I don't have kids. I don't have grandkids. So that's part of it. Because the women I talk to, they really talk a lot about, I want to see my kids grow up. And then I want to see my grandkids grow up. Like, I have a cat. So, she'll be dead before I am. So, not to be morbid, but so I just said, my problem is not if I die, if I live. What am I going to do if I live? Like, I'm tired of living in the shadows. And I sensed the Lord saying, now I'm releasing you to full-time ministry. I'm like, cool. Like, what is it? And it's just like the Lord, it's just like, I can't say he spoke or anything, but it's like, what do you want to do?
I know what you said.
Sometimes it's like, oh God, lead me and lead me. I meet women, I minister, primarily to women. And they're like, oh, I'm just waiting till I feel led to do something. And I go, how long have you been waiting? 23 years. I've been waiting 23 years to be led. I'm like, maybe you have lead poisoning. Because if you haven't been led in 23 years, something's wrong, honey. So I just like, it's almost like God said, what do you want to do? And I said, oh, you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to get in my car. I'd love to drive around. I'd love to do shows. I'd love to sing. I have 200 songs, and some of them are even good. And I have, my comedy. I could really develop that. And then I could share my story about going through hard times. And it's like, that inside is like, God is like, yeah, do that. So 2 years passed, and 2011 went into the oncologist's office, and he said, you're good. You're in remission. So I was really glad that I hadn't wasted it worrying.
Right.
And then within a few months, I was on the road. I started off with an interview on 100 Huntley Street, which was our big Christian TV program up here, kind of like the 700 Club. And started with an interview, and then I did a 5-week tour of Ontario, Canada, and then did 7 maritime tours, Nova Scotia.
Let me stop you. I'm so sorry. What is your, explain to me how your show go from the minute they introduce you to the minute you say goodnight. What goes on? How do you start it? What do you talk about?
I start with a tap dance routine of 53 minutes. No. That would be hard with our
I do that. I'm like, wow, you're taking my act. Yes, 52 minutes. I've never done 53.
So I come out and I start with my Tim Hortons joke.
Okay.
Which is very Canadian.
So stand up. You open with stand up. Yeah, I want to hear it.
No, I'm sitting down. No, because it's sit down comedy. Because I have arthritis in my knees. So I sit down. It's sit down comedy.
So yeah, you introduce you go and sit on the stage.
Well, not on
the chair. On the chair, right.
Stool. Let's be accurate. It's a stool.
Yeah. It's a stool. Okay.
And I say, and I'm usually in a small town in Canada because we have a lot of those. And I go, oh, yeah. So I was in a Tim Hortons day. Everybody knows what Tim Hortons is in Canada. And I said, I went in the bathroom and I was sitting there. And like, you guys are so friendly in this town. Someone came in the stall beside me and then said, hi. And I was like, hi. And she said, how are you doing? And I'm like, wow, friendly. I said, good. She said, what are you doing? And I'm like, the usual. Never got asked that in a bathroom stall before. And then she said, do you want to go for a coffee when you're done? And I said, sure. And then she said, I'm going to have to call you back. There's some weirdo in the stall beside me, and she thinks I'm talking to her. Yeah. So that really went over well with you. I can see you just hilarious. But anyway, so it goes over well here. And then I just do about 45 minutes of jokes. I do the menopause song. And that rings true with a lot of women and husbands who are married to menopausal women. Because you know why it takes 4 menopausal women to change a light bulb?
How many?
It just does. So and then they have a break and they fill themselves with sugar. And then we come back and then I do a serious song, one of my serious songs, and then I start unpacking my testimony. And it gets very quiet, and we dim the lights because sometimes people start to cry. Because if I talk about being molested when I was 7, well, that's over half of the audience right there.
Can relate to that. That's sad.
Used to say it used to be 1 in 4 women. It's not 1 in 4.
That's sad. That is sad.
Sometimes I think it's 3 and 4, 4 and 4, and men. Men have told me after that they've been molested. And then we talk about being diagnosed with clinical depression, going through an extremely difficult marriage, 25 years, and then the cancer. And with that package, you've pretty much covered the whole audience.
Mm.
And then I talk about the hope that is in Christ. But I also, in this next phase of ministry, I've had a 2-year hiatus. I don't know why. I just thought, maybe a 2-year hiatus for no reason. Oh, wait, it was COVID. And so now we're going into the next phase. In the next phase, I really feel I'm ramping up to not
Uh-huh.
only do music and comedy, but to emphasize that the gospel involves suffering.
Mm.
And I tell you, this North American prosperity, easy living, no price tag, it's just wrong. And it makes me angry. And it
I
also,
agree with you 100%. I
it
agree with
also,
you.
yeah.
You know what? Can I say something? Because I'm going through studying this right now, and one of the thing, and in John, in we're not, I'm not trying to teach the Bible right now, but in John 11, where it says, a message came to Jesus, says, "The one that you love, Lazarus, is sick." So the word, the one that you love, the one that Jesus loves, and sick in the same sentence, give me some prosperity pastor to explain that to me. Because
And
there is
John, and
suffering.
John the Baptist was his cousin,
Exactly. When you love, yeah, yeah, there's people that Jesus loved that got sick. I
beheaded.
mean, beheaded and got, yeah. So continue. I love this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm against this whole prosperity teaching. I don't think it's
And I
biblical.
understand. I was in the prosperity gospel movement for 3 years, and I say that with shame, not pride. But I understand how you can take scriptures out of the Bible. I mean, Jesus said, whatever you ask in my name, I will do it. Speak to this mountain, it will be moved. So there's enough scriptural evidence that it looks like we should be, praying our way out of stuff. But it's always balance, right? And then there's common sense. And I hope I'm not, well, I don't care if I'm offending anybody. I didn't find a lot of common sense in the prosperity gospel because there were people who were really under the gun, like, Johnny Erickson. She's been in a wheelchair forever.
I worked with her. I love her.
Yeah. And she just had some women come to her not too long ago and say, Johnny, there's obviously sin in your life or you'd be healed by now. This is
Oh
just
no.
cruel. It's cruel. And
It's
I understand the meaning behind it, the motivation behind it is good, but you have to look at you're condemning people. So I don't even know how I got it. Oh yeah. So that's
yeah.
the thrust of my message. As I've been renewed over the last 2 years, I've done a lot of self-care, gotten counseling for stuff. I've, joined Weight Watchers and lost half an ounce. And I just, it's just not happening. Um, I'm a big mama. And I just feel like this is my new mission to present the entire gospel. And if you don't like the entire gospel, then you should choose another faith because I'm sorry, you can't separate suffering from the gospel, especially when you go to other cultures. Can you imagine going to
Yes.
Sudan and saying, well, you're obviously being tortured for your faith because there's sin in your life? Like, how insulting. Or
Exactly.
Rwanda. Some of the things that make sense that we try to make sense and they could actually be believable in our context. You go overseas, it's just obscene.
Okay. You said something in your bio that says, you know what? As a public speaker, motivating people to be all they can be is another passion. Helping others to identify their fears. How can people identify their fears and begin to find healing?
Well, I mean, I have to be really careful when I address this because, anxiety is huge now, panic attacks. I would never, because of what I've just told you about depression, that, well, if you just knew Jesus more, if you just had more faith, you would, I can just imagine someone saying, I'm really afraid, and someone saying, well, the spirit of the Lord, casts away fear, and, he's not given us a spirit of fear, but I asked someone recently who's in the profession of, psychiatry, and I said, what is with all these fears and anxieties and all that? And, it's interesting, anything with the brain. Now, when you and I were growing up, did you know of anyone who was dying of a brain tumor? Like, I never met anyone dying of a brain
No.
tumor. And now I've known about 50 people. A guy right around the corner from me, 38 years old, just died of a brain tumor. Guy last week, I know, died of a brain tumor. Like there's a lot of brain tumors. There's a lot of Alzheimer's. And I wonder if a lot of these fears and anxieties and panic attacks is actually a brain thing. Yes, it could be social media. Yes, it could be this, it could be that. But we can't ignore the environment we're in, and the organ of the brain is undergoing some tremendous changes. So, but if it's not an actual medical fear, or then I would look at, is there something in your past that has allowed a stronghold to come in? Now, one woman told me she watched horror movies when she was 5, 6, 7 years old. And she said that's what started the fear in her life. It's just horrible. There are other people who are afraid of death. Like I've had cancer patients ask me, how do I deal with this fear of death? Well, in that case, I would say, look at your theology. What do you really believe? Not what you say you believe. What do you really believe happens when we die? Because if it's true that we just absent from the body, present with the Lord, what's so horrible about that? I know you have one woman came to me, tears streaming down her face, like in my show. She had two young children, and she was dying of lung cancer from secondhand. She never smoked. Her father smoked.
Poor
thing. What do you say? Obviously, she was sad to die, but I would like to think that God can take away that fear, that, coming to the Lord and saying, I don't want to be afraid. I want to be victorious. And I would say also, if you have fear in other areas, to find a godly counselor, to find someone who is rooted in the word, but not so legalistic that he's going to make you, or she's going to make you feel guilty for being afraid. Someone who can work with you to unpack it, because to understand the fruit, find the root. And that's often the case.
Now, in your shows, how are you promoting it and branding it? If people coming to see a comedian, or are they gonna leave crying, or do they leave you close with a big laugh? Or with the gospel? How do you run?
Well, I've done, I don't know how many shows you must have done thousands. I've done 500. I'm like, your understudy at this point. I've been doing it 9 years, right up to COVID. I was doing about 50 shows a year. And so the exit surveys, is that how you say it? What people are saying when they come out?
Right.
They're inspired. They love the laughter. They're touched by the music. They're inspired by the story. And I ask people, and the first few shows are your worst, right? When you're doing this as a living, you make mistakes, you do a joke it's not dirty, but it's a joke that, people find it a little, and so you eliminate that joke, and you eliminate that joke just in case there's, and then I ask people, like, so what's your impression? Like, what did you get from the evening? Oh, just so inspired. Like, the Lord showed me that if he can do it in your life, he can do it in my life. The Lord showed me I shouldn't be grumbling and complaining. What do I have to fear? I need to laugh more.
So what's the last thing you say, like the last 3 minutes of your act? What is that about?
I say that I came through all of the cancer and the depression, and that it's, it's been 2 years. What do I say?
I know.
Just that, what, in complete surrender to God. And if you haven't surrendered your life to the Lord, if you'd like to talk to me after, I'm available. To complete surrender, not to be afraid of suffering, because he holds our hand in the suffering. He doesn't promise to take us around. He promises to take us through. And
did you feel lonely? Do you feel lonely sometimes? Did you have a support of friends and church around you when you were going through
the cancer?
Yeah.
I wasn't lonely in the cancer, but I have battled loneliness since the womb. And that's what I'm working on now. The trauma is realizing that my parents were so involved in their own suffering that I was orphaned. And now I have no family at all. I have no siblings. offspring, parents, grandparents, aunts, not knowing. But I have pushed people away for my entire life. And that's a
Mm.
result of trauma. It's self-sufficiency. And I've been getting a lot of creds for it, over the last 9 years. Oh, wow. You drive I drive everywhere. You drive across Canada by yourself, and you put up you do these shows by yourself, and you do all the setup, and then you tear down by yourself. And it's like, yeah, good. And now God is working on that area. It's like, okay, now we're going to deconstruct that. And you need to be grafted into a community, he's telling me. So, and I'm in a new province in a pandemic. So,
Well, hopefully it's over. I think in California, I think this last week, Los Angeles decided, oh, we don't have enough cases, so maybe we have to
yeah,
open
it's
up again.
winding down.
Let me ask you, anything funny during those 9 years of doing comedy, traveling, doing that? Any funny stories, any embarrassing stories happened to you as a comedian or
So
as a
many.
speaker? Do you recall one that's
No,
funny?
no, because I'm over 60. I don't remember anything. I don't know. I can't. I had a little fan once. I plugged in this fan. I was in Timmins, Ontario, because I would have hot flashes, because it was menopausal.
Right.
And it was kind of shaking, So I'm in the middle of this beautiful, slow song, and it just rattled off the table, vibrated off the table. Bam! It's like, the Holy Ghost is here. Oh no! And then I'm sure you've had this. Christians can be like really uptight and
Mm-hmm.
like
Something.
Pharisees, and so sometimes you'll get emails. I didn't think that was very funny. I thought that was really inappropriate. Like, I do blonde jokes. Maybe I'm gonna edit those out because a few blondes have been offended. I show a clip of the movie I was in where I had an IV in my arm, while I was getting chemo, and a lady said my husband died 3 years ago, and I found it so insensitive that you showed that clip. But
What?
yeah, but I mean, that's her reality. And there's a saying: if you're triggered, it's not the responsibility of everybody to tiptoe around you. It's your
Yes.
responsibility. So she was still grieving. So, and I didn't want to. I wouldn't admit guilt because I did nothing wrong. Because I go to the organizer when I get complaints, and the organizer said, no, people love that clip. It's from Beauty and the Breast. So I emailed her back, but she wants to be heard. She's saying I'm hurting. So I said, I'm so sorry that it hurt you. I'm not apologizing for what I did. So sorry
Right.
it hurt you. I said, people across the country love that clip. And I said, you're obviously hurting. I hope you can get help for that grief because I think it's still very real to you. So
That's
he's
wise. That's
heard,
very
and
wise.
I'm okay.
Say that again. Bec- People, just
Triggered.
because it triggered you, it doesn't mean that everybody around you has to be tiptoeing.
Well, that's the political correctness, right? I was like, oh, I was offended. Oh, that's not. Oh, I'm so offended. It's like, okay, so deal with it. Don't expect everybody to, especially for comedy, as you know. It's like,
Oh yeah.
did I
Oh
say that?
yeah.
Did I say that? I mean, the rule in non-Christian comedy is never edit. Well, we edit, we censor, we don't censor, we just have clean comedy. But on top of that, when you have something, oh, I didn't like that you talked about the color red because when I had the color red, when I see red, it's like, it's
You
just,
know,
what?
Jeff Allen, comedian Jeff Allen, said it very well when he said, "If there's no malice in your joke, there's nothing to worry about.
Yeah,
You don't have. You can say it. If there's no malice or prejudice or
yeah,
discrimination or racism, just say it. Don't
yeah.
worry about what You can. Some people are really they want to be
They
offended.
want to be offended. And it's
Right.
part of identity. Everyone's looking for identity now. So with the transgender and the transitioning, and it's everyone, it's almost like there's such a huge crowd. Everybody wants to stand out in the crowd. So if they can't figure out something that's unique about them, then it's
They're
being
gonna
offended.
get.
It's
Do
like,
you still write songs?
I find with this, doing this for a living, it kind of can quash the creative. Do you find that? Like, I'm so taken up with the business side of things. I never actually give myself permission to just take a night off and write. But I need.
That's That's a very good point. Let me give you the solution because I mean, I always love to help comedians, but I have this and I'll show you. It's on my desk. I never showed it to anybody publicly,
Oh,
but
I feel so special now. You're
yes,
showing me.
yes, I'll show
It's
you.
yellow paper. Wow.
No, no, it's different colors. I
Oh,
put these on my desk. In the next 2 hours, I'm a writer. I don't think about
really?
work. I don't think about anything else. I don't take calls. I don't read emails. I'm writing comedy. Now, sometimes on a Monday, sometimes I'm a public relations.
I
I do
thought
my
at first
promotion.
I thought that said public restrooms.
Public relations. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then sometimes I'm an agent for Nazareth. I call
I
and do
love
bookings for
that.
Nazareth. And sometimes I'm a creator. I think of ideas and stuff. And I do that and I'll put it right in front of me while I'm working. And
I
I
love
would
it.
do, and sometimes I put this and I go, I'm going to
I was
go and
just going to
just,
ask you if you had a husband when.
yeah, I
That's
have a husband and sometimes I'm an athlete. So I
yeah.
said I need to go with sometimes I'm a father and I put
Oh,
that father and sometimes I'm a pastor. So I'm preparing messages and sometimes I'm a student of comedy where I
that is
listen to
awesome.
and that's always remind because my brain's ADHD and I have to focus. Oh, what am I doing right now? Am I writing? Am I making calls? Am I feeling guilty that I didn't make
Yeah.
calls or I'm yeah, so
So cool.
yeah, so that's to answer your question. Like sometimes you do because you're trying to do the business part of it. You're going,
Yeah.
I'm not writing, but
Yeah.
what's your most creative time, Wendy? What is your most creative time of the day?
Oh, it's not morning.
Mm.
No, I
So
mean,
at night, you're like my
no.
son. He starts working at midnight. He starts to be.
Sometimes I'll go to bed at 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning. What I find is, especially battling loneliness, is that I think a lot of people do this. You don't feel as lonely in the middle of the night because everyone's sleeping. So you don't feel like you're missing out. During the
Mm,
day, it's like everybody's getting together and you imagine in your head, everybody's going and doing things with people and going shopping. And here I am sitting by myself. At night, you don't have that. And I find it clears the brain to just, but I rarely create these days. It's all about, and maybe it's because I don't have the luxury to do those different roles because um, I don't have anything booked. Canada hasn't opened up yet.
yeah, that means you can write now. This
Yeah.
is the best time. When's your book coming out? Did you have a book?
Oh, I tell you, people have been asking me about a book for years. I've been working
Are
on a
you kidding
podcast
me?
for
Are
months.
you kidding me? If anybody needs to write a book, it's you.
I know, but
No, no.
that's
I'm gonna push you. I had so many people, writers, that I pushed them to write their books, and they wrote them. I'm gonna
really.
push you. Yes, I'm
I
gonna.
think that's more of an
Yeah,
American thing. Honestly, every single American I know who's like popular for 5 minutes has a book. Like Leland Klassen, does he have a book?
because you're Canadians. It's too cold to write. No, I'm just saying. No, no. I'll tell you what. You need what do you call it? A, because you have a story.
I
You
know.
have, and I know they did a movie, a documentary about your life. But I mean,
Oh, it wasn't
uh,
about my life. It was about 9 Quebec women.
nine Quebec
Yeah,
women. Now, you know what? There's people who only read. They don't watch. They want to read. They want to be encouraged. They want to be lifted up. There's
yeah.
people who gonna people. There's people who will never come to your show, but when they read it in Spanish or in Chinese or in
I don't
Arabic,
know how to write in Chinese.
just write it in English and Google will do it. No, you'll have people. I'm serious. Your book will be a bestseller.
Well, if I self-publish,
You know what? You don't need to self-publish when you have that story.
so who do I go?
Go,
You and I have to talk.
focus on the family. Focus on the family.
Really?
Talk to focus. Talk to focus.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Thanks,
you have
Dad.
a powerful story. Okay, normally I ask the guest in last minute of the show, can you encourage people? You've been encouraging us from minute one. What do you have to say to the audience in this last minute? What do you something to lift them up like you've been
Send
doing?
me chocolate. Send me. I don't care about Weight Watchers. Send me chocolate. Um, you know, suffering. Here I go on suffering again. But if you are
That's fine.
struggling, if you are suffering, if you are down, This is not a sign that you're off, that you're doing something wrong. It may be. It may be. If you're not being loyal to the Lord, you may be suffering the consequences of your choices. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you're having a really hard slog with your child, your finance, whatever. Listen, this is part of the journey. This is just ringing over and over in my head lately. It's part of the cross, it's part of the walk with Jesus. It just strikes me that Peter was following at a distance and then he denied the Lord. We're not supposed to follow at a distance. Get as close as you can to the Lord. Follow as closely as you can. Stay in fellowship with others. Learn to laugh at your circumstances, even when you just want to scream. Just find comedy in something, you know,
Amen.
and believe that the suffering shapes us. We do not grow in blessing. We appreciate the Lord, but we don't grow. In suffering, we become more like him if we allow the suffering to do its work. And we die to self, we die to flesh, and we come closer to Christ.
I love your heart. I love your walk. I love your faith. I
I
love your
love
story.
you too,
How
Naz.
can people get a hold of you? How can they get a hold of you?
Well, you could yell really loud, but it's a long way to Canada. So it's better if you use email or phone. But my website is wendyhaha.com because
WendyHAHA.com.
yeah, because a lot of people don't know how to spell Farha. So we just wendyhaha.com. Now there's not a lot on the website because I'm just redoing it. So my old website's still up, wendy.ca, but that'll be going away soon. And so wendyhaha.com, and you can email me through the website. You can find me on Facebook. When Instagram is, I don't remember. Go on the website. All the links are there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for taking the time. And you know what? I want to encourage you. We have a show every weeknight at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, which is in about an hour. And you'd be great because we have a lot of people. Some of them are lonely, some are single, some are the, and they always, I ask funny questions and they respond with
Oh,
comedy. You're gonna love it, and you're gonna meet a community of people that love you. They're
wow.
gonna pray for
That's
you
on your
every single
that's
weeknight
on your
on
comedy channel?
on
On your
on
page?
Facebook, Comedian Nazareth tonight, 8:30 p.m. So
Oh,
if you, yeah, I would love to see you there. You'll be funny. We have a lot of comedians on it. So
that would be
thank
wonderful.
you,
Thank you for
and
having me.
you're welcome. And Teresa, my friend, she went through chemotherapy throughout the whole term watching the show. We're tonight will be show 413, I
Oh,
think. So I'll see you there tonight. Thank you so
that would
much,
be
Wendy.
awesome.
Okay, and if you've been watching the Wendy, what an amazing, amazing story to be able to laugh through all that and to encourage. What an encouragement! Please let your friends, people who have cancer, people who have depression, anxiety, let them listen to this podcast. I appreciate that. And if you're new to us, if you just only watch us on this platform, the podcast, I want to encourage you to watch the Live with Naz under Comedian Nazareth every weeknight at 8:30, and also subscribe to this podcast. So we hit number 50. We are number 50 in the top comedy, not Christian, comedy stand-up podcast around the world. So number 50 on iTunes. That's a big deal, and thanks to you guys. So please ask your friends to join us and to subscribe, and you subscribe. We'll see you tonight 8:30 under Comedian Nazareth. God bless you, and thank you for